Welcome to MFP Live. I'm Donna Ladd, the editor and co-founder of the Mississippi Free Press. And here with me tonight, as always, is Kimberly Griffin, who's the publisher and the other co-founder of the Mississippi Free Press. Hey, Kimberly.
Hello.
So Kimberly and I are just tickled to welcome a special guest here tonight, the president of a university here in Jackson that we are all super proud of, that is seems to be blowing up in so many different ways. Let me tell you a little bit about him, and then I'm going to hand the mic over to him. Thomas Hudson was named president of Jackson State University on November 19th, 2020 by the Board of Trustees of State Institutions of Higher Learning, also known as IHL, after serving as special assistant to the president and Jackson State's chief diversity officer. In that role, Mr. Hudson served as co-chair of the university's strategic planning committee. He also was on the executive cabinet and provided guidance to senior leadership on all topics related to the university's future course and trajectory. And before going to work at Jackson State, Hudson had founded his own law practice and served as an EEO specialist for the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA. He holds a bachelor's degree in political science from Jackson State University and a Juris Doctor from the University of Mississippi School of Law. He is a member of the Margaret Walker Alexander Center Board of Directors and the JSU Athletics Hall of Fame Foundation Board of Directors. Welcome, President Hudson.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on.
Well, even just there from your bio, you know, part of, or at least the part that I actually read, because it was a lot longer. I just want people to know that. But it's so obvious that you've been in these forward-thinking roles at Jackson State, you know, and that I know that's something that Kimberly and I are really excited to talk to you about. Sure. I just kind of want to just get you to talk a little bit first, and then I'm going to hand it over to Kimberly, but about, you know, what this feels like to be the president of Jackson State University after having studied there.
Well, Donna, it feels great. It's a wonderful feeling. It's an honor. It's something I'm very humbled by, but it's great to be really in a leadership role at the university that really helped nurture you, and now offers you the opportunity to do so, you know, for so many others who are also in my position. So it's a great feeling. It's a true honor to be at the helm of Jackson State University, especially at such an exciting time in our history. And, you know, we have great momentum that we want to keep going. And I'm just proud to be at the helm of it.
Go ahead, Kimberly. No, I was just going to ask you, you just said it was an exciting time. Tell us why it's an exciting time at Jackson State.
Well, you know, there's just so many great things going on. You know, of course, I can mention this certain football coach that we hired a little while ago that has just really helped us explode in terms of the realms of athletics, entertainment, doing all those great things to keep fans interested in really the entire city, but also academically. You know, we just had commencement, and about 1,000 students marched across the stage, and 1,000 students who are now launching from Jackson State to, you know, who knows where they will go into, you know, STEM fields, you know, doctors, attorneys, entrepreneurs. And it's exciting when you get to do that all over again this fall. And so there's a lot of great programs going on. You know, we just recently were approved to start offering a new major in supply chain management. And, you know, anyone who follows the economy knows that that's really one of the main things affecting the United States in terms of commerce. And Jackson State is very proud to be at the forefront of that. We recently launched a new center for living, learning, and cultural engagement, thanks to a community foundation earmarked through Congressman Thompson, which will allow us to really get more into the space when it comes to social justice, community engagement, business, innovation, all of those things, which really help us become a real mainstay. It's helped us, I'm sorry, become a real mainstay right here in West Jackson. We recently launched a strategic plan, which is really meant to help set the trajectory of Jackson State for the next 5 years and beyond. So it's just a really exciting time for Jackson State University. It's a wonderful time to be in Jackson, a wonderful time to be in West Jackson. And Jackson State is just happy to be at the helm in the forefront of all of those great things happening.
One of the things you and I were talking about right before we got on camera is I think this is a real opportunity for universities, particularly universities, as we folks struggle with college loan debt and getting advanced degrees and how much those cost, and having options that are, maybe you aren't a PhD, you're a Juris Doctorate. Can you tell us a little bit about your trajectory to this place? Because you were a practicing attorney and now you're the president of a university. How did you get here is, I think, an interesting conversation to have, because you talked about this being an opportunity, because being the president of a university in many ways is like being president of a small corporation or a large corporation in your case.
Yeah, and that is interesting. And, as we were talking about, you're seeing more and more people come from non-traditional backgrounds becoming university presidents. I do have a legal background, and I was able to take those skills in terms of policy and advocacy and really bring them to a university setting, and particularly to an HBCU like Jackson State. And I think it's really been to my benefit. I've certainly learned a lot in this role about higher ed and education, but I've also been able to bring some of the skills that I brought to the table to Jackson State, for the betterment of the university. My trajectory, I started here almost 10 years ago as the EEO officer, had oversight as it relates to our equal employment opportunity programs and also our diversity programs. And through that, I was able to rise through the ranks, chief operating officer under former interim president, Dr. Rod Page, special assistant to the president, as you stated earlier, until I was called upon to take the role as president. At each step of the way, not only I try to take some things that I've brought with me and use them to enhance the university, but you also have to be open to learn. You have to be open to learn from the environment that you're in. And that's been one of the keys to my upward trajectory, is being able to learn within the environment that I'm in and try to use that plus the skills that I already had and bring to the table to enhance and elevate the university. So, again, it's there are a lot of different ways. You see people from all walks of life come into this field, and I think it's great. I think it adds to the diversity and just overall greatness that you see in higher education.
Yeah, years ago, I graduated from the W, and I was on a presidential walk with Dr. Borsig at the time, and I didn't realize that was an opportunity to tell him how much money we needed for everything, every possible thing, for him to point out everything that was broken. I thought it was a walk with the president; it was going to be lovely, but it was. And he talked about how colleges are, young people make decisions like consumers, and they're in the position of power now, where that wasn't always true. Like, they come back and they say, well, Jackson State gave me a full ride. What are you going to do? Right. And he said, I lost 2 people this year because Jackson State built a coffee shop faster than I could.
Yes. And you know what? Interesting. And if I may, that's very interesting that students are increasingly making those market-based, market-driven decisions. One of the things we've really tried to push at Jackson State, in addition to, amenities, of course, your residence halls, your programs, all of the things, the campus environment, but we're really trying to push that affordability combined with access to the great programs that we offer. Affordability is key. As students begin to make more and more market-based decisions, one of the questions they're asking is, how much debt will I leave here with? At the conclusion of my time here, after I, attain my bachelor's degree, especially if I'm looking to go into continue my education, how much debt am I leaving here with? How much this is going to cost me to obtain this great education that we're speaking of? And so as students continue to make those market-based decisions, it's up to all of us, all colleges and universities, to look at our product, to look at what we're selling, and to start to make decisions that are in the best interest of those students' needs and those students' concerns. At Jackson State, we made the conscious decision to not raise tuition. And we're the only institution in the state to not do that. And we've not raised tuition for 3 consecutive years. So for the 3rd year in a row, we've kept tuition level. We did that in part because, of course, we're in a pandemic and all that comes with that. But also we did that because we really wanted to hone in on affordability, really want to hone in on debt and make some determinations that'll help students stay in school, help students attend schools, and help students live out the same dreams that we were able to when you and I are in school, Kimberly. So, those things are very important. And yes, the coffee shop does help. New amenities like we're building a new dining hall, those things do help. Programs like I talked about, our great public health program, supply chain, all of the things, they are helpful. But again, that affordability is something that we have to continue to push. We want to make college attainable for as many students as possible.
You bring up the idea of student debt, and President Hudson, you and I were not at school at the same time, but I'm gonna put that on my Facebook that you think we were. I think I got you by a decade or so. Shanetta Chrysler says you are the best president in the hemisphere. You should call her when you hang up and ask her for a donation. So one of the things we talk about is affordability. I have a kind of a layered question about affordability, because I think this is an opportunity with the vice president, you've got 2 professional athlete coaches, you've got another coach, Coach Reed, who is a shining star. Athletics are important to every university, but also academics. Talk about what's happening in the world of an HBCU president and what's happening on the HBCU landscape right now, that's really bringing you to the forefront and maybe giving you some exposure and attracting some folks that may not have been thinking about an HBCU 2 or 3 years ago.
That's a great question. Of course, you mentioned some of the factors as it relates to just the wonderful athletic success we've had with, Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, Coach Tamika Reed, who grew up right here in this area. And again, has come back to her hometown and done wonderful things. Same thing with Coach Mo Williams, who has arrived on the scene and brought a level of excitement. So you certainly see those things from the athletic front. But when you talk about the overall HBCU movement, really what we've seen in the past 2.5 years, a lot of it attributed to George Floyd and things like that. And I get asked this question a lot, like, how does it feel to be in this moment? And I always have to pause and make sure that we acknowledge that HBCUs have always been here. We've always been here doing the work. We've always been here producing just these wonderful graduates throughout our history. We've always been here educating and graduating students who wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to obtain this graduation. And any entity, that when you look at statistics, the vast majority of African-American doctors, lawyers, chemists, biologists, every field that you can think of, predominantly HBCU graduates. Any entity that has that sort of track record should never be lost to time. It should never be overshadowed. We should always be in the spotlight. We should always have that shining moment. So what we have to do is make sure we continue to do the work that we're doing now. So there's never a time when people can say, well, gosh, I'm rediscovering HBCUs, or we're just discovering HBCUs. We've always been here. We've always been doing this great work. And now it's time to capitalize on this moment and keep this forward momentum going by doing the work.
And I'll make one quick comment. I'll turn it over to Donna. But one of the things the statistics bear out is how many MDs went to an HBCU, how many Black MDs went to an HBCU, how many Black engineers went to an HBCU. It's disproportionate to the population of colleges. I know your team has a program, and I think this is something very special that you see at HBCUs and maybe not at other schools, that helps first generation college students. Can you tell us a little bit more about that program?
Well, yes, we have, and actually have several programs aimed at first generation college students. But, just to recap, a first generation college student, they're really the first in their family to attend college or have the opportunity to attain a college degree. And so those students come with different sets of circumstances. So we offer holistic services through those programs. In terms of, increased academic support, but also that external support. We recently opened a financial wellness center that is geared towards helping our students in matters like budget, in matters like credit. What happens after you obtain a degree in this great education? How do you spend your dollars, and how do you maximize your dollars in a way that helps our community create wealth, which is, is one of the areas that we've been historically farther behind. So, our programs, Jackson State, HBCUs were really created for first generation students. And at Jackson State, we're just very, very proud of the work that's happening with those students, really helping to make a better society, which is the mission of all HBCUs. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it is an effort that we're extremely proud of.
Donna, I think you're on mute. And I will say that was my sorority, that the picture they flashed up there, and I did not plant that picture.
Yeah, she did not. Sorry about that. I told you I'm out of practice for a week here. So when knowing that you were coming on the show tonight, one of the things that I was just kind of thinking back about Jackson State since I moved back to Mississippi in 2001, and just kind of watching the changes, the visible changes to the feel of the campus during that time, the openness and the construction, and I, at least from the outside looking in, now I've been on campus a lot. I was on the journalism advisory board for a while, and various assorted reasons to be on campus. But, I'm still not a member of the JSU family, obviously. But it did feel like there was this resurgence of pride, I think. Not to say that pride all went away at any point, but that was just kind of very, very outward. And then obviously, what we've seen in the last couple of years with Coach Prime and some other things. But so the question here I would like to know from you is, what do you, as a former student who is, who like played all, you just kind of worked your way up the ladder there, it's like, so what are some of the specific examples of positive changes that you could point to for us?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Donna, we're, very excited to have you as a part of the JSU family. You've always been very supportive of our efforts. Do appreciate all your service. But to answer your question, when you ask about, what are some of the specific positive changes that you've seen, you mentioned the construction, and those things are very, very important. The entire landscape of this area and the dollars that are poured into Jackson State, which are dollars that are poured into West Jackson, an area that does not see a lot of investment. Those are some of the great things that you've seen, and you're going to see a lot more. Mentioned new a major project which will enhance not just the JSU student body, but also the entire area. We're also looking to do some things with the Lynch Street corridor, really beautifying the area around the Masonic Temple, Kofo. We've taken ownership of the historic Natchez Cemetery, and through some grant funds we received through the National Park Service, you're going to see a major beautification project over there, and really just creating this sort of museum corridor with Kofo, with the Margaret Walker Center, with the Masonic Temple, Natchez Cemetery, all leading into Jackson State University. So there's been a lot of progress made, a lot of investment into this university, which is, again, investment in the community. But it's time to really take the next step. We're going to take full advantage of the dollars that have been allocated, either through the infrastructure bill, through various state-supported projects, and really take the next step to enhance the beauty around the campus, while also putting dollars into overall campus programming, which will allow us to offer more of those services, not just to our students, but also to the entire Jackson and West Jackson community as a large. So, as I was talking to our operations person the other day, it might get ugly around here as you look at a lot of construction projects happening, but it's really going to be for the greater good of this entire area, and we are very, very excited about what's to come.
So, what can you tell us about the status of our stadium?
Somehow I knew that was a lead in into the stadium.
I had a feeling. Not that stadiums are the only thing that matters, but
But no, right now, in terms of the stadium itself, of course, there was a study that was completed that has been partially released. It hasn't been fully released yet as we kind of fine tune a couple of things. The key is going to be, the level of investment in actual funding. Stadium is about $100 to $120 million project. It's something that we want on our campus that will, again, enhance the economic development of this entire area. We feel that it's an exciting project. It will be a really one-of-its-kind project, but it'll also be a sensible project that will realize a return on investment when you talk about tax dollars, you talk about bringing more people into the city, spending right here in Jackson, West Jackson, downtown Jackson. It's something we're very excited about. So again, we're going to finalize the study. We're going to do a couple of economic impact feasibility type things and really make the grand push for what we feel will be a very exciting on-campus stadium. So stay tuned. As I say, with any large-scale economic development project, these things are a long shot. But we're very excited about the possibility of really presenting our case and the best case for why Jackson State should have an on-campus stadium.
Well, we talk about the stadium, and the other thing that I've often thought about after moving back to Jackson is because I went to Mississippi State for undergrad, and we would go, and I'm older than both of y'all, so I'm just saying, but we would go to the stadium, Memorial Stadium, for the big games, right? I mean, I watched Mississippi State beat Alabama and beat Bear Bryant in that stadium. And that'll give y'all a hint about how old I am because I was in college. But so I have pretty fond memories of coming to Jackson and going to Memorial Stadium. But so I preface this question with that. And how do I put this? Could you explain to people who don't understand why your stadium needs to be on the campus, which I fully agree with, by the way, but just why is that so important?
Well, it's a couple of reasons. And look, I too share a lot of nostalgia with Mississippi Memorial Stadium. My first game, I'll date myself, was as an 8-year-old in 1985. So I'm, part of my entire history, right, is Memorial Stadium, a great old facility, but it is an aged facility. So that's one of the first issues you have. A lot of work needs to be done to bring that stadium up to modern standards. And there's costs, sunk costs there that you have to be mindful of. So that's one of the first instances. Also considering the location of the stadium. Again, it's a great location, and it might have been a great location at the time, but for where we sit, we really want to build on our campus, around our campus, continue that connection of Jackson State to downtown Jackson, and really enhance the economic impact of this area. And we feel that a stadium would allow us to do that. Anytime you can get 30, 40,000 people in one space, spending dollars, being entertained, and not just for football, even the possibility of concerts, festivals, all of those things happening in an area that hasn't seen a lot of that investment. All of that is just a win-win, not just for Jackson State, not just for West Jackson or the city of Jackson, but for the entire state of Mississippi. When you think about it, just realistically, how many entities within this state can you say can bring 30, 40, 50,000 people at one time, multiple times per year into a space and have that level of economic impact on an annual basis? There's very few. So certainly all of those factors speak to the need for Jackson State to have an on-campus stadium that will continue to feed into its community and our surrounding areas.
I want you to talk maybe a little bit more about downtown, you know, what you need to be successful when that stadium. I'm giving you this opportunity to lobby here if you need what you, because one of the things I noticed in the last year, I didn't. Okay, so maybe I went to some games, but I didn't go inside. I mean, I'm outside eating, so tailgating. But one of the things I noticed is perhaps there wasn't enough hotel capacity. What do you think? Because what we're doing right now is we've got Coach Prime winning football team. We've got Coach Reed winning women's basketball team. We're adding Mo Williams. There's a lot of excitement around that. So there's going to be a consistent increase, a consistent presence of people who are Jackson State fans, Jackson State adjacent, Jackson State folks that just want to see these winning teams. Also giving you all the opportunity to recruit young people from those families that you're growing in that ecosphere. What else do we need downtown for this to be to support Jackson State, I guess is the word?
Just that continued growth. I appreciate and support the city, our city council, our mayor, in their efforts to enhance our downtown area, whether it's through security, whether it's through beautification, just adding those elements that make a downtown robust. And so just more of that support. As Jackson State, we stand ready to be a part of any solution that enhances the entire city and does enhance downtown Jackson, especially as it relates to connecting to West Jackson, where we are. So just that continued support in terms of those areas. We really look forward to continuing just a great partnership we've been able to develop with the city of Jackson and with Hinds County within those areas. But, really no complaints on our end about how we've been supported and how Jackson State has been received in those efforts. We just wanted to continue and to see more of it.
I know one of the things, I'm switching gears. Our son is in the Boom and we stay in Pearl on every visit. We would prefer to stay in Jackson proper. Okay, well, we've heard it. I do have friends that are 5-star Airbnb hosts because of Jackson State University at this point. So come on, we'd love to have you. Let's talk a little bit about your Elevate strategy. Am I saying the name of that right? Talk about those points, talk about where you are in that process, and talk about where you're headed.
Well, Elevate is our strategic plan that was launched in September. This past September 21. So we're really in year one of that plan. And really what JSU Elevates is help set the trajectory of Jackson State throughout the next decade. It's 6 different parts of the plan, but it's not looked upon as 6 distinct parts. And what I mean by that is if you look at the first 3 elements, student success, academic prominence, research excellence, all of those deal with the core mission of the university. Student success, really dealing with learning outcomes, graduation rates, increasing our grad retention and persistence rates, increasing the number of students who go through internships and obtain jobs after graduation, but also just from the student services side. What makes a happy student, through student activities, a healthy student, increased awareness in terms of wellness and things like that. And then looking at academics and research again, how do we maintain that relevance as it relates to academic programming, starting the new programs and the relevant programs that help our students stay on the cusp of where the world is going. And then moving towards research, how do we continue to be a part of the solution as it relates to what ails the city and the state? When you look at having the School of Public Health, the state's only accredited School of Public Health, it's not just about having that designation, but it's also about how we can be a driver of the research that helps in terms of mitigating those health disparities that you see throughout the state. You saw a lot of that with our work in COVID and helping with the vaccination clinic and helping with information campaigns through our grant with the CDC and our our partnership with the State Department of Health. So again, those first three goals really deal with the core mission of the university: teaching, learning, and research. And then when you look at goals 4, 5, and 6 in terms of athletic prowess, which, again, a lot of people consider athletics as a standalone, but athletics helps support the core mission of the university. As you talked about, it brings eyes to the university that may not otherwise have looked, and allow us to continue to do that great work that relates to our core mission. In campus sustainability and aesthetics, how do we make all of this happen? What type of place do you need? What type of residence halls? What type of learning facilities? What type of campus environment can you build under campus sustainability? And finally, just that Tiger Pride, alumni engagement, philanthropic efforts, the support of the university, what undergirds the entire support, what makes JSU JSU. So when you put all that together, it's really just a comprehensive plan that all aligns together for the betterment of Jackson State as we really continue our upward trajectory, and really helps us set the course for the next decade.
You're going to think I'm a sports nut because I keep bringing things back to sports, and I'm kind of am. So, watching these top athletes commit to Jackson State, first of all, it's just amazing and exciting. But commit to Jackson State instead of non-HBCUs. I mean, to put it as but just to see that excitement and to just even feel that pride to be right here in Jackson, and understanding the history of Jackson State and what it's been through in many ways over the decades around racism and so many other things. But I guess I'm just curious how you would describe how that kind of just intense pride then translates into some of these other goals that you are listening through the strategic plan. And I'm a huge fan of strategic plans, but how does that all fit together at this moment in time, I guess?
Well, in a couple of ways. One, as I talked about in terms of supplies, bringing a certain level of prestige, bringing all of those things, those bright lights to the university, which then once you're here and once your eyes are on JSU, now we can get you looking at our chemistry program, the great work being done there. Now we can get you looking at the great work being done in terms of research, in terms of just the great efforts happening throughout the entire university. It may not be necessarily athletics related, but they're about Jackson State University. And also just the overall alumni pride. When you have anyone who knows, if you're from Jackson, Jackson State alumni are very proud, of which I am one. And that really helps immensely when you have just such pride in your university, and sports helps elevate that. And so, it's not something we take lightly or for granted, but it's certainly something that helps enhance the overall just look and feel and just excitement and spirit around Jackson State University. So those are a couple of the real elements. But really the key thing is when those students, when a Travis Hunter or any other top level athlete decides to attend Jackson State University, what they're really showing is what we've known all along, is that you can launch from Jackson State University. You heard me talk about 1,000 or so students who graduated just about a week and a half ago and are now being launched onto the next stage of their career. And again, within that group, you have the next CEO of a major corporation. You have the next top justice, all the way up to the Supreme Court, if you will, as we see that anything is possible. You have the person that's going to patent the next great invention that helps change all of our lives. All of that can happen from an HBCU and from Jackson State University. And so when a Travis Hunter comes here, he's saying that, hey, if it's my goal to be a top caliber pro athlete, I can launch from Jackson State University, just like the 4 other NFL Hall of Famers were able to do the same. It helps with the immense pride of the university, the prestige of the university, and it certainly helps others view Jackson State in a better light.
One of the things you talked about was your public health program. Of course, we know about your public policy program. We know about your chemistry department. What are some things, some misnomers that we hear from folks that might not understand, as one of your, I'm sure, alumni said, the greatness that HBCUs produce? And I think I heard you right. You're the only accredited public health program in the
Yes.
state in the middle of a pandemic. I think you cannot stress, that's a fine point there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, thankfully, we're coming out of a lot of the things that you used to hear that would suggest that maybe HBCUs were less than, right? Certainly never been a feeling amongst us. I mean, we knew about the greatness of Jackson State, and really anyone who studies higher ed know that HBCUs have always consistently punched well above their weight in terms of the great students, the great programs, the great research, really those things to deal with our core mission that we produce. But there's still a lot of education that has to be had. We still have to make sure we educate people so they know that, just what I said before, that your student, your child, your loved one can launch from Jackson State into wherever they want to be. Whatever they were meant to be can happen from right here at Jackson State University. We just have to continue to keep telling that story. We have to continue to keep educating. We have to continue to keep spotlighting all of the wonderful things that happens at Jackson State University and other HBCUs, so we can continue to just cure some of those issues that you see about people who still don't quite get the full HBCU story and the greatness of it.
And this may be an opportunity to talk a little bit about what it's like for a young person, a young Black person, a young person of color, a young first generation student. What happens in an HBCU that may not happen in other places?
Well, first of all, it's that community, that nurturing, that support. When you talk about first generation students, and look, we're an HBCU for all. Okay, we welcome everybody to Jackson State University, but there's something, and I heard this mentioned elsewhere. There's something about the house that you're invited to versus the house that was built for you. And in a lot of instances, Jackson State University is the house that was built for you. And there's just something special about that house in terms of the nurturing environment, in terms of the community atmosphere, in terms of just being a place where you belong, which helps you, again, reach the next trajectory, the next level on your trajectory. So that's really that quintessential HBCU story that we love to talk about, but that we have to continue to work hard so we continue to produce more and more of those stories as we go on.
And then I'm going to turn it over to Donna. But can you give us a state of what's enrollment looking like? Can you get any more people on campus?
We can absolutely get more people on campus, and we do welcome more people on campus. We had a few years of enrollment decline. We're happy to have stabilized, not only stabilized, but continue to begin to grow again. As I talk about, we want to grow responsibly. We want to grow in a way in which we can continue to not only onboard more students and expose as many students as possible to the great programs and the great education you can receive at Jackson State, but do so in a way that we can continue to nurture each and every student. We can continue to graduate students, offer those internships, keep our class sizes low enough so you can actually get to know your professor. That's really going to be the next step and the next thing that we have to do as it relates to our enrollment. So yes, there is absolutely room for growth at Jackson State University, and we welcome those students, even up to present day as we onboard for fall 2022. We welcome those students who want to have an affordable, quality education right here in our capital city to attend Jackson State University.
So, President Hudson, my partner in life, Todd Stauffer, is very interested and writes a lot. He writes for Innovate magazine and some other things about innovative things going on around the state, and particularly working with universities. And one of the things that he has just mentioned to me so often is how JSU is such an important part of that kind of forward-thinking tech mix. And he loves to talk about the Center for Innovation Startups, and particularly Dr. Almisha Campbell, of I-Corps. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about what's going on that front, because frankly, I don't think that enough people in our state understand how not just Jackson State, but Jackson State and other Mississippi universities are kind of collaborating on a lot of this kind of innovative work and startups and training students, in this kind of work. So if you could talk some about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, glad you brought that up because, Dr. Campbell, of course, is doing wonderful work through the Jackson State University Center for Innovation, which is really just sort of our own internal campus tech hub where students can go learn about various things. They do podcasts there, patent creation, all of those things, even 3D printing, which, 3D printers have been around for a little while, but we're really barely scratching the surface of what they can really do. And our students are at the forefront of that, creating things right here on this Jackson State campus. And so, just a lot of wonderful work being done through the JSU Center for Innovation. Also partnering with other local entities. We all know Ashley Cephas and the great work she's doing with the Jackson Tech Hub, which sits right within our campus footprint when you look at it geographically. So, partnering with her and partnering with all of these other different entities in and around Jackson State University, and within the state of Mississippi, really pushing innovation in a state that's not always known for it, but you would be surprised at just all of the great innovative technical things that are happening right here within our capital city, within our state. And again, it's something we're very, very excited about, and we're very proud of the work Dr. Campbell and her team is doing in that effort.
Right now we're talking a lot about student debt. And I have friends that went to private schools when, 25, 30 years ago, and they had some debt. Those same schools are now 3 and 4 times the cost. Students are more aware of debt. They understand it better than I certainly did. And they are concerned about that debt. You talked about how you're helping to educate students about debt, how you are keeping your costs low. What are you seeing on the landscape in terms of, I would say, public universities as a whole, as you probably become a better buy right now?
Well, it's definitely a challenge, Kimberly. It's definitely a challenge because, costs are increasing. It costs more to run a university. As I said, it's a small city. When gas prices go up, it affects what we do. When energy prices go up, when food costs go up, all of that affects the products that we offer. And it is something that we have to remain vigilant about. So, I have friends across the country who run other universities, and it is a growing concern. How do we keep costs down? How do we keep tuition affordable, while at the same time being mindful of the fact that just the overall cost of doing business continues to rise? For us at Jackson State, we made the intentional decision to not be too aggressive in putting those increased and rising costs back on the students. We want to be as efficient as possible in our operations. We want to increase and have continued to increase our philanthropic efforts, things that allow us to offset some of those rising costs that we were talking about. But doing so, again, does require us to remain vigilant. So, it's an issue across the country. It's throughout the higher ed landscape. But at Jackson State University, we're going to do the best we can to keep college and accessible and affordable.
Thank you so much. I know you are switching cameras. That's what happens when you have a TV station. I want somebody to come and switch my cameras and mic me up. One of the things I think is important, I went to a PWI, but I'm probably the first generation of folks in my family that didn't go to Jackson State or Southern. A few people went to Alcorn that didn't go over well in my family, but it's interesting to watch, because I do think there was a moment in time where folks, I say Black folks, didn't, particularly maybe my generation, because we were the first group of folks who really went in mass to PWIs, didn't understand if it wasn't for HBCUs, we would have had that opportunity to go to PWI. So one of the things I always encourage people to do is to give back to the HBCU that nurtured your parents.
Yes.
If you didn't go to that
Yes.
HBCU, I try to give money to Jackson State because I would not be where I am if it wasn't for Jackson State. You know, the same with Alcorn, the same with Tougaloo, the same with Valley, the same with whatever your school, because everybody's got a family school where there's a lot of people go to that school. If you are come from a family where there's a lot of higher education, and so I really work to make sure I'm giving something back to Jackson State. Preaching, give it back. It's a must, right? So that folks can leave, our young people can leave school with lower debt. I think President Hudson, you may.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Donna,
No.
I'll kick it over to you. I was doing a rant.
Okay. Well, if I may jump in just real quickly, to your point, giving back to the HBCU to help nurture your family, if not, it may not be exactly your alma mater, but again, it's where your parents went, it's where your uncles, it's really where you first learned about the true value and worth of education. Kimberly, that's such a great key point. In Jackson State, that we have benefited from people in that exact situation who, yes, I didn't go to Jackson State University, but you know what? My parent went here, my grandparent went here. And because of them, I'm able to do this. I'm at a place in my life that they couldn't have dreamed of. So that's a great point in terms of giving back to those institutions to help make you, even if you're not directly related to them. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's an excellent point.
And then I'll jump it over to Donna. I am my grandmother went to Jackson State. So we are my grandmother, my parents, and many of my cousins. So I do try to support.
I want to ask you a couple questions about or somewhat related questions, but one of the things I think of, and when I was reading your bio about being on the board of the Margaret Walker Alexander Center, and being really familiar with the work that they do there, and thinking about just the history of violence and the rich, important, horrendous, in many cases, history of racism and of students and professors and others, kind of rising up, whether it's, so many of the cases in the 60s and 70s. The COFO Center you mentioned, which is right there off campus. And I was kind of involved really early on when it was just a little shell of a space and that process was starting. So through all of that, I really got to know the history, the rich history of racism and fighting racism, anti-racism, civil rights movement at Jackson State. And, it's like a whole history lesson and book in itself there. And so I guess my question there is, or it's really just to get you to talk about how you guys use that history really, or how, what role does that history play in Jackson State being a special place for your students, particularly Black students, but obviously not just the Black students? How do you integrate that history into just kind of your overall sense of who you guys are at your university? That was long and winding, but hopefully that took you somewhere.
No, it absolutely did. When you think about, history and just kind of the, tragic history, if you will. Mm-hmm. And, Donna, growing up in Philadelphia, is it can that tragic history be a stain, or is it a story, and a story that you can learn from? I'm thankful that at Jackson State University, when you talk about the 1970 tragedy with Gibbs Green, student at Jim Hill and one a student at Jackson State. Tragic, horrible day into a real legacy of activism, a real legacy of education, a real legacy of advocacy around the very issues that brought them to that fateful day. I'm proud of the way Jackson State has used that time to not only enhance the campus, has used those commemorations to really as a learning experience and as a continued learning experience for our students, for researchers who come from far and wide to study that very event, and just continuing to tell that story. We have an event, the 52nd commemoration, coming up in just a few days. And that's going to be very important for us to continue to learn from that shared history and that tragic day. So at Jackson State University, I'm very proud of the fact that we used that tragedy to really turn it into a story. And it's really become a story of triumph. It's really become a story of, advocacy, really a story of how you can turn history and the learning of history into present day gains and present day victory. And at Jackson State, we've been able to do just that. So we'll always continue to commemorate the legacy of Philip Gibbs and James Earl Green, and continue to use that to push out what needs to be told about the history of Jackson State as it relates to the history of the city and this state.
Mm-hmm. And, I think I have a feeling everybody agrees with me that it's never been a more important time, that we need to do this in every possible way that we can. And thank you for interpreting that question very well. And I don't want us to get out of here without asking you to talk just a little bit about, speaking of difficult times, about how the university dealt with the recent bomb threats that were coming into HBCUs, including Jackson State.
Yeah, well, you know what? It was very intentional. When I think about the day that Jackson State received its bomb threats, I was actually on my way to Memphis because myself and one of our students, Jayla Maynor, were on our way to the New York Stock Exchange with FedEx to participate in the bell ringing, the closing ceremony of the New York Stock Exchange. That was significant because those bomb threats were meant to do exactly what they were intended, which is to thwart the progress, the upward trajectory, the overwhelmingly positive coverage HBCUs have been given, and really turn that narrative into a negative. And I'm so happy that our students were not deterred. Jackson State University was not deterred. HBCUs as a whole were not deterred. We were happy with the support we received from the FBI, with the state special agent in charge, Jermichael Fomby, who himself is an HBCU grad, Miles College. Also, the state Capitol Police, Keith Davis, was very helpful in not only, along with JPS, making sure the threat was mitigated, but also keeping an increased presence around the campus during that time. So certainly not a headline that you ever want to be a part of. I'm thankful that our faculty, our staff, and most importantly, our students were safe and remain safe throughout. But it was really an attempt in the end to disrupt the positive narrative around HBCUs, around Jackson State University. And in that sense, they did not win because the story continues to be a great one. The arrow continues to point upward, and we'll continue the great work that makes Jackson State and all HBCUs what they are.
You've told us about a lot of terrific things going on at Jackson State. We've talked about parks, national parks, and we talked about stadium progress. We talked about adding programs. We've talked about stabilizing enrollment. We talked about winning sports teams. Is there anything else you think we should know? Because I think that's enough good news to last us for a couple of years, but I'd love a little more as we close out.
Well, look, there's a lot of great news happening at Jackson State University. Probably the best news is that, as I said, we get to do this all over again. There's going to be a couple of thousand new faces coming to us this fall. in August. And, we are excited. We can't wait. But really, it begins the next story of HBCU greatness and JSU greatness with those new students who are seeking, what you have, what I've been able to obtain. It's just that wonderful education, that wonderful opportunity. So all I can do is tell you to stay tuned. There's a lot more great things coming from Jackson State University, wonderful things that I don't even know about, but that will present themselves. And we look forward to really continuing to tell that story. I look forward to being back on here sometime and continue to tell you about the wonderful things happening at JSU.
But we will have you back anytime. I have on my list. I do have on my list. I have Coach Reed on my list. I have Coach Griffin on my list. I have a whole list.
Coach Prime.
I have a whole list of ringers.
I am a Cowboys fan these days, so
so excited about that. As many of you know, this is our spring fundraising campaign. And one of the ways you can contribute is if you become a monthly member at least $10 a month. You get access to some fantastic opportunities, including Donna's Shut Up and Write Talks, which helps you write you're about to say nonprofit. I'm so used to saying that. Your nonfiction narrative. We've got so many fabulous people in there that are telling us this is inspired, because a lot of times we think it has to be something special. As I'm not President Hudson. We want everyone in your family needs to hear your story. We all need to hear your Mississippi story or your not Mississippi story. The next one's May 24th. And if you join at any time, you get the opportunity to watch all the replays that include everyone from Anjanou Ellis to Stuart Stevens to New York Times bestseller Angie Thomas. So this is a great opportunity to get your story written down. President Hudson, I know you're busy, but we do want to hear your story at some point. If you are not able to do something monthly or annually, we'd love to have you contribute to our spring campaign. We're in the thick of it, and your dollars help us tell Mississippians accurate, factual, give Mississippians accurate and factual information. And we need that now more than ever. We are about $4,874 so far. Our goal is $35,000, and every dime helps. Another way you can help is if your company has a matching program, because we are a 501c3. So if you give something and your company will chip in something, that's another awesome opportunity. We are so excited about what the fall and the summer holds for the Mississippi Free Press, but we got to have some, one of the publisher sayings is the free press is not free. So we got to have some additional dollars to grow our capacity. And I think that's all I got.
Well, and what I would say is also throw your dollars at Jackson State as well, and support our local HBCU that's making us very proud, worldwide, always has, but, it's really on fire right now. So President Thomas Hudson, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was just a delight. It went fast. Y'all keep sending us story ideas. Keep up the good work out there. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. And it did go fast. It was very enjoyable, but thank you so much for giving us this platform. We appreciate it.
Well, we're here. Y'all just let us know and send us your story ideas too, And to the rest of you, we will see you next week. I believe, am I right, that it is Dave Dittis and his father, I believe, who's going to be talking about a remarkable new book. Y'all will be seeing our information about that out there, but we're really excited about that show. Speaking of COFO, and someone who is actually there then. So we will see you all next week. Remember, please share this in your networks. Keep people watching, and y'all have a fabulous week.